Explosions near Kadyrov's gas stations in Grozny, the Feodosia terminal burned down, Trump announced World War III. The situation at the front, a new Israeli special operation and damage from Hurricane Milton in Florida. Top news for you live. 4 people, including 2 children, were killed in an explosion at a gas station in Grozny. As a result of the fire, a gas station exploded in the Akhmatovsky district on Muhammad Ali Avenue. This was reported by the Russian service of the Ministry of Emergency Situations. The Ministry of Health in Chechnya reports 5 victims. The footage shows that a fire broke out first, and only then a fuel tank exploded. After that, the second tank caught fire. This was also reported that it was spilled to avoid repeated explosions. Now the site of the explosions at the gas station looks like this. "50 meters from there is the Leader gas station, which is part of the network of gas stations of the Ramzan Kadyrov family." The explosion occurred just 2 days after Kadyrov announced the blood of Senators Suleiman Kerimov and State Duma deputies Bekhan Barakoev and Rezan Kurbanov. The head of the Republic himself has already taken the investigation under personal control. The footage from the scene of the explosion shows that the fire destroyed the gas station almost entirely. The Investigative Committee of Russia announced the initiation of a criminal case under the article on the provision of services that do not meet safety requirements. Let me also remind you that the reason for the declaration of blood feud by Kadyrov was the conflict around wild berries. In it, the head of Chechnya sided with Vladislav Bakalchuk, and Kerimov on the side of Tatiana Kim. After this statement by Kadyrov, in the Moscow region, there was an attempt on the life of the ex-deputy chairman of the government of Ingushetia, Sherip Alikadzhiev, whom Kadyrov called a criminal. Also in Ingushetia, the car of employees of the Center for Combating Extremism of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the region was shot. Now about the refueling. Apparently, Kadyrov is already being sent unequivocal greetings by his opponents, and it is not yet clear who will be overtaken by a blood feud in the end. The oil terminal in Feodosia burned down. 8 tanks were destroyed. OSINT analysts from Cyberbaroshin noted that the fire affected a total of 12 tanks, of which 8 were destroyed. Buildings on the territory of the facility also burned down. An oil depot can be crossed out for a long time, if not forever. Let me remind you that the base of Feodosia was successfully attacked by the armed forces of Ukraine on October 7th and burned for almost a week. Putin said that Russia would restore everything destroyed in the occupied territories. The scheme is as follows: we break here, then we build. After all, it is the Russian army that burns Ukrainian cities into ashes, and promises of resumption often end in failure.
Step by step, we will definitely restore and rebuild everything that was destroyed and damaged. And, of course, we will create conditions for realizing the rich agricultural potential of our historical territories that have reunited with Russia. In general, among the key tasks facing the Russian agro-industrial complex is to increase production volumes by at least 25% by 2030. Export growth by at least 1.5 times. I emphasize that this is our strategic goal. And, what is fundamental, it should be achieved by strengthening the technological capabilities of the industry.
Here is the answer for you. The so-called historical lands are needed to grow agricultural products on them, on fertile Ukrainian land, and sell it. Apparently, farmers were not allowed to speak Russian in the field before, and now they have been released so that the Kremlin can earn money. Although it is worth starting to rebuild from your own homeland. After all, how unsmooth everything is. But the paradox of Putin's reality is that the residents of the Russian Federation simply do not notice the events inside Russia. They know much more than the American or Ukrainian president, and they never even think about why this is so.
Perhaps because we talk a lot about America and Ukraine on TV. We know a lot about Zelensky. Even my child, who is in the 5th grade, talks a lot about Zelensky. He talks a lot about Trump. Perhaps because there is a lot of talk about it from everywhere, both on the radio and on TV. Although we watch very little TV, and YouTube, for example, if you open it, there are a lot of memes about Western politicians.
Why is the same not true of our country? No one says anything about Putin, no one criticizes him.
Well, this is not a question for me. Why? Well, honestly, I don't know. I never even thought about it until I met you. I never even thought about it. I didn't even pay attention to it. You have just drawn my attention, in fact.
Russia is trying to regain the drone advantage in its hybrid war. And in addition to not-so-secret developments together with the Chinese, modifications are constantly being carried out at the front. Thus, Z military correspondents report that Russia has begun to equip its drones with REB devices. This device scans the video channel in flight and, if it detects an active signal from the UAV, activates jammers at the same frequency. In fact, this is an attempt to repeat what Ukraine is already doing, to release drones against drones. Back in the spring, analysts noted that there is parity in the use of UAVs on the battlefield and, for example, this is what the consequences for Russian equipment look like after a strike by an FPV drone.
Blood flew to us here. Everything is covered in blood. I was sitting there in front. Here was his guy sitting right in half. The second guy had a concussion. Everything is covered in blood. It's very tough.
The network also showed the work of the so-called Dragon drone of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Belgorod region. According to the video, the drone burns trenches and forest plantations where the Russian armed forces are stationed. According to the geolocation established by OSINT volunteers, the video was filmed near the village of Novostrovka Vitoraya in the Hyverin district. The first videos with the use of drones with a mixture of aluminium powder and iron oxide by the armed forces of Ukraine appeared in early September. The burning temperature of the substance is about 2.2 thousand degrees Celsius. It is capable of burning metal and causing serious burns to people. The video was shown by the Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance unit Skylords. The situation on the battlefield is also reported by the Deep State Resource. On the night of October 13, project analysts reported that the Ukrainian military had restored the situation near Novhorodivka in the Donetsk region. In parallel, according to analysts, the Russians advanced near Vesele in the Donetsk region and Krylyukovka in the Kharkiv region. The three groups claim that the RF armed forces carried out a powerful attack on enemy forces in the Glushkovsky district from the area near the village of Vesele, and in Obukovka, the defense forces were allegedly knocked out and pressed to the border, a number of strongholds were defeated and prisoners were taken. In parallel, the cleansing of the settlement of Lyubimovka continues, according to Z military correspondents. Severe fighting continues near Novoivanivka, Sudzha district of Russia. This is confirmed by Russian groups. The enemy also advanced near Borky and Spastov, the same region of Russia. Active fighting continues in the Kursk region after the defense forces partially returned the positions where the Russians had entered. They began to send columns to storm again. The war there is dynamic, maneuvers are characteristic of wooded areas and very dynamics. Therefore, it is important not to fixate on any conclusions as final. Russian military correspondents, by the way, are generally trying to hide the topic, according to Kovalenko, because everything does not turn out the way they would like. The deep state resource also reports that Russian terrorists shot 9 Ukrainian prisoners of war in the Kursk region. It is reported that they were shot on October 10 in the area of the village of Zeleny Shliak. The fighters went to the positions thinking that they were in the relative rear, but were already forced to make contact with the enemy and fired back, but the number of ammunition was limited and they were forced to surrender, according to the deep state report. I would like to point out that there is no official information on this topic yet. Olaf Scholz does not want to transfer heavy equipment to Ukraine, Bild writes. The publication reports that the country still has almost 300 Leopard 2 tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, as well as an unspecified number of howitzers. However, the German Ministry of Defense doubts that Ukraine will be able to launch a counteroffensive in the near future to liberate territories and allegedly stop deliveries. In addition, the material says that the Chancellor also did not give a positive response to the request to allow strikes deep into the Russian Federation and the supply of long-range Taurus missiles. However, he did not answer with a categorical no. The Israeli army reported 2 attacks from Lebanon on Israeli territory, during which 40 shells were recorded. The IDF writes that after the sirens that sounded closer to midnight in the Upper Galilee area, about 25 shells were found flying from Lebanon to Israeli territory. Some of the shells were intercepted, and the rest fell in an open area. A few minutes later, approximately 15 more projectiles launched from Lebanon were found in the same area. As of the morning, the IDF announced the interception of suspicious air targets that flew from Lebanon to Israeli territory in the coastal area of Nahariya. According to the protocol, the sirens did not sound, but by 9 a.m. they started working in the areas of the Galilee and the Gulf of Hai and Carmel. About 5 shells were identified and crossed from Lebanon into Israeli territory and were successfully intercepted. The Israel Defense Forces also reported that they struck about 240 terrorist targets in Gaza and Lebanon over the past day. The operation in southern Lebanon continued with strikes on Hezbollah targets, including launches, anti-tank missile posts and weapons depots. The IDF reports that it has eliminated dozens of terrorists, discovered tunnels, weapons and ammunition. It is reported that IDF troops continue to operate in southern Lebanon to eliminate the infrastructure of terrorists. In the Gaza Strip, Israeli troops attacked 40 terrorist targets, and a launcher from which Ashkelon was shelled was destroyed in the Jabaleh area. The reports include dozens of killed terrorists and the destruction of additional weapons in the area. A terrorist center has also been eliminated in southern Gaza. Donald Trump believes that World War III could begin in 3 to 4 months. This was stated by the U.S. Republican presidential candidate at a rally in California.
I'm actually worried about the next 3 months. I really think so. I'm worried that the next 3.5 to 4 months will end in a world war. Because of these people that we have.
Trump reiterated that if elected President of the United States, he will be able to resolve the conflict in Ukraine and end the chaos in the Middle East. I will remind you that the politician has previously repeatedly criticized the actions of the administration of his predecessor Joe Biden and stated that he could end the conflict in Ukraine, as Russian publics write, in a day if he is re-elected President of the United States. He also claimed that under him the war in the Middle East would not have started. Hurricane Milton, according to preliminary estimates, caused damage of $50 billion. U.S. President Joseph Biden noted at a press conference at the White House that more than 3 million people were left without electricity as a result of the hurricane. But thanks to the dedicated work of 50,000 power engineers from 43 states of the United States and Canada, they restored power supply to 1 million users.
And another important task is to dismantle the rubble. The U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Florida Corps of Engineers and the Florida National Guard are now working on the ground to help the state clear debris to reopen roads and critical ports.
The U.S. Coast Guard is making efforts to restore the Port of Tampa, which delivers large quantities of fuel and other goods, playing an important role in the region's economy. Researchers attribute the power of Hurricane Milton, which has already taken 17 lives in Florida, to the effects of human-caused climate change. Nature reminds us that we all have consequences, everything has its consequences, and among other things, I think, atrocities against entire nations that Russia is engaged in. Friends, I traditionally put an ellipsis on this. See you soon. Yana Bohoslavska work for you in the studio. Traditionally, I urge you to take care of yourself. See you.